Happy Monday. Welcome to Bring the Jury podcast with Luke and Bryan Sheely. I'm Hannah. We are coming to you live today from Columbia, South Carolina, where we're going to be talking about the Idaho 4 case, specifically what's going on with Bryan Kohberger. If you have any questions, you can always drop them in the comments section, the live feed. I'll be filtering that here and asking any questions that we may have. But yeah, so
when you say filter, is that when you like block and you like stop people from saying things?
Yes, correct. I have had to, filter people out before.
People that asked you like stupid law school questions.
Yeah, don't make me look like an idiot.
What was it? It was
what
was the rule of perpetuity? Hey, Hannah, can you tell us the rule of perpetuity? That was just
That
was on
no, I can't.
And none of us can.
Yeah.
Before we get started,
Well, you didn't like that reminder?
if y'all ever want to follow us or watch small clips of this throughout the week, you can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, TikTok, obviously. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all those great places. And Bryan always likes to remind us we're also on MySpace. I need to update our
I honestly think if MySpace is still a thing, we talk about it enough in jest. I think Sheely Law needs a MySpace account.
Who would be on your top friends?
You? Yes.
Well, yeah. I hope so. Because I'd be managing it. I would make sure I was number one.
I think all of our TikTok followers, we have to can we just as a challenge.
Anna Banana would be in our top friends.
Anna Banana, let's do a TikTok challenge. Let's double up and let's see if MySpace is still a thing.
Okay.
Let's check out some of the functionality of it.
I'll add that to my list.
Bring out our old school stuff, our Segas and our GoldenEye. Was GoldenEye a video game during MySpace time?
Well, it was during college for us in high school, so that would have been 97, 98. So Hannah was like...
I was 4.
Yeah. We were drinking beer and not studying hard enough.
Okay.
Yeah. This has been a great intro into our talk for today. So if you joined us last week, you may remember that we were having some technical difficulties. It's not anyone's fault, but Bryan did drop his phone in the sand when he was at the beach. So
yep. So I have now purchased a new phone.
That's why we look so crystal clear today.
How do we look? We look pretty good?
Yeah, we're looking great.
Oh yeah. I got the 14 Pro, so I'm not playing around.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
iPhone 14 Pro, people.
Wow, that is no joke. So we are going to be touching on some of the things that we talked about last week, but through a whole new lens because we do have new information about this case. So just a good little update, recap, fresh new ideas. So if you joined us last week, you should still totally follow along because it'll be like a totally good episode.
And with the technical glitches, if there are any burning questions from last week that you recall and you still want those answered, we can answer them right here and now.
We sure can, yeah. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. We're going to start with the death notice, just like we did last episode.
Yeah, so Kohberger was just your average quadruple murder that has the whole nation in the grips of intrigue. And then, as we thought, they served death notice. And, a death penalty trial is way different from your average murder case. Luke's tried, you've been involved in 2 or 3 at this point. So we'll ask you some questions. Don't answer just yet. We're going to let this, content build. But the defense team would have been thinking about the possibility of a death case from the very beginning. They would have surrounded themselves by smart lawyers. We just had Julia flash by.
Speaking of a smart lawyer.
Speaking of smart lawyers, Julia, you made our video. You might as well come in and say hello. But anyway, they would have had a mitigation team, psychologists, all this kind of stuff. And then it becomes kind of a political question of whether death is going to be sought or not. Is the case winnable? I guess that's always a consideration. Or is death notice something that politically it must be done so that prosecutors can seek justice, get reelected, all that kind of stuff, but it usually will push back a case. Luke, why does a death penalty case take so much longer to do than your average murder case? Help enlighten our listeners.
Well, typically because it's 2 phases. It's not just the guilt phase, which is a normal trial. Can the prosecutor prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? If they can in a death case, then there's a whole sentencing phase where the sentence is either life or death. So you have twice the phases. You have enhanced jury selection process because the stakes are so high that you really want to know, and you're allowed by law certain more enhanced procedures that we talked about before to select a capital jury.
Oh, we're going to talk about that again.
But
we're going to talk about that
fresh
again.
new content.
And that could be...
Because we had a good point on that last time that we'll get to, but yeah, finish.
Well, just like, for example, in South Carolina, a murder trial, even a double murder trial, if it's not death, your jury selection process might be a day. Because you're just not, by law, you're not allowed to conduct your own questioning as a lawyer of the potential jury. The judge still gets to conduct all the voir dire. You only get attorney-conducted voir dire if the state is making a death case. And so that unlocks the entire, much more advanced, time-consuming process that you can have, rather than one day, it might take a month to pick a jury. Just because it's so important and there's so much more information and data, and you get huge panels of prospective jurors, and it may take me and the prosecutor an hour to select one juror and decide whether they're qualified or not, whereas in a normal case you just don't get all that.
Luke, I know the last, and I'm just going to think about that case you did in Aiken where it was a cop killing death penalty case. How long did it take for you to select a jury with a team that you were trying that with? How long did that take?
That was a very quick one. It took like a week to select a jury.
But still, whereas some murder cases may wrap up in a week, I mean, we just did a murder case about a month ago that wrapped up in about a week.
Right.
So in that case, it took you...
Someone's at the door.
Do I need to get it?
Carry on.
Is it Julia? Is our associate? If she's knocking at the door, interrupting this, we're going to bring her on. Oh, someone at the front door.
Oh. This has never happened before live.
It's actually a client at the door.
Yeah, a client has come to the door.
Should we drag him in?
Yeah. What'd you have for lunch? Oh, it's your client.
No, that's his name.
Oh, his name is Bryan. What'd you have for lunch?
I had Uberito.
What's Uberito?
It's delicious, quick, healthy Tex-Mex.
Sponsored by Uberito.
I had a bowl. It was chicken. It was avocados floating around. Black beans, rice, all the deliciousness.
Everything you need for a burrito bowl.
Man, quick eat at the desk kind of things. I knew we were busy today. We were kicking off with lots of criminal cases. We were getting ready for the pod.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sometimes we have clients at the door and we have to get with it.
Yeah. He has absorbed Luke. So it is now just us. I guess we'll just keep it rolling.
Well, so I know
he was talking about. I usually tune out whenever Luke starts talking.
Luke was talking about like capital style jury selection, and you get to actually really ask a lot of deep, meaningful questions to your potential juror who's going to decide life or death. And I was going to probe him to talk about something he likes to talk about, which is the Colorado method, where you're basically using like what they call strip questions, where you're basically trying to basically say who's a killer and who maybe is not a killer, and so you try to get someone to kind of get their aggravators out, like I would know this fact pattern. Let's say someone's child was kidnapped from a supermarket and tied up for 3 days and then set on fire. What do you think about that? Would you be able to be fair and unbiased, or you just gotta die? Someone's got to die for that kind of...
Are all the questions circumstantial?
No, I
Like
think
situational
I think some of
stuff?
the fact patterns can be pretty hard hitting, but like you're really trying to, from the defense perspective, you're trying to elicit people that would say, "Yeah, I'd kill that person. Sign me up. I'd do it." And so then the defense will know, all right, that's and they have it's numerical. So you've got like, well, that's a number 7. You know, that person's a really bad killer. Whereas in like a 1 or 2. Because at the end of the question, or the fact pattern, well, or can you hold up your oath and be fair and impartial and give this person a shot? Mm-hmm. And if anyone under like egregious facts says, yeah, I could, listen to both sides of it and understand the presumption of innocence, then that person gets deemed as a non-killer. And then, hearing all this voir dire, you can get someone that's a killer off the jury. So who was that? Someone
Show up client.
a show up client?
Yeah, just want to check in.
Did you answer all the questions?
Yeah.
All right. So I was starting to discuss the Colorado method and how you can identify someone as a killer versus a non-killer. I was probably doing an inartful job of explaining it.
Probably.
Do you want to talk to everybody about how you go about doing that since you've been trained in that? And we can kind of go from there.
Sure. In a nutshell,
Here we go.
it's just
We talked about lunch, so
It's just a revolutionary method for capital jury selection developed in Colorado by some great lawyers out there.
Like who?
Like David Wymore, for example. And a whole legion of great, awesome lawyers that developed. They said, it doesn't really matter what someone's bumper sticker is. They create a method that rates and identifies potential jurors based
Are there
on
7s and 1s?
on their
2s?
tendencies from like 1 and being would never ever convict anybody or sentence to death based on religious beliefs, so they just don't judge people. It's part of their moral makeup. To a 7 who's always going to kill and vote for death based on just the charge itself.
I think I did pretty well.
And there's so many variables
Luke,
in
you
between.
were in that end.
I'm sorry. But the method creates kind of a series of carefully staged questions that are meant to elicit that information very quickly from a prospective juror by kind of making them almost inflamed about a terrible set of facts, and that you kind of get them to agree with you, yes, that you'd want to kill that guilty murderer, right? And that's the only thing that's fair. And if they agree with you, then you know which way they're leaning, and you can kind of
Strike them for cause.
strike them for cause based on certain categories that a judge can't do anything with. If you think there's someone that could give life or be very open to mitigation, which is what allows them to grant life. It's, by law, if they find any mitigation, they have to. Then you want to protect them, isolate them, encourage them, insulate them to stick with their convictions. And so that's the whole process. As part of it is educating, part of it is identifying jurors, and it's very in-depth to the way it used to be, but also very effective. So honestly, in capital cases, a great example was the Parkland shooting, where our friend Casey Secor was part of that team. He came in just for the jury selection process because he had been so well trained in it, and then kind of morphed into part of the trial team. But they did an excellent job, as far as I can tell, on a heinous case of really picking a jury based solely on those issues. And then they got that surprise result, which was a life sentence. So that's an example of how really the jury selection process matters almost more than anything in a capital case these days.
And Luke, you've had an experience I'd like you to touch upon a little bit, because just because you pick a jury doesn't mean you're going to go forward in a trial. I mean, you had that death penalty case in Aiken that was an officer shooting, and after the jury was seated and selected after that week, the state said, we're going to give your guy life based on what we see here, because we don't think we can get a death sentence.
That's correct.
In front of this jury. Tell everybody about that a little bit.
Well, that's basically it. I mean, we've been offering life throughout the entire case. He'll plead to life. No, we can't. We won't. We can't. And it wasn't anything disrespectful. It was just the state's position. But through this week-long jury selection process, where we were very well versed in the capital Colorado method, and they were not, but they were kind of picking it up on the fly, kind of as we were going, we became very effective at getting rid of all the killers, as we would say, people that would rank as 7s, 6s, 5s, And seating, number one, very good jurors in terms of being open to life that we would rank as a 2 or 3. So getting rid of the killers, putting life givers on there, but there were a couple particular jurors. One in particular was a young African-American male, and our client was a young African-American male who was a 2, and he was protected, and he was educated, and he was on that jury, and they had some strong concerns about him, and basically came to us on the eve of trial and said, come meet us, we're going to make you this offer, we've got some paperwork. And it was just a momentous occasion, and that was really part of the kind of state's press conference afterwards. It was based on the jury. They didn't think the jury would ever come back, the one of that particular makeup, on a death. So that was a great situation for our client.
The power of jury selection. Bring the jury.
Bring the jury.
So
bring the right selected jury.
Yeah, we have a few 1s and 7s in the comments already.
I mean that some 1s, some 7s, but here's the thing that stands out to me. Let's play a little game.
Okay.
And now we've covered this case a little bit, but Hannah.
Okay.
So, what evidence covering this case with us? What stands out as the evidence of this case? And then let's talk about how that could play into jury selection. What's the big evidence that you recall in this case?
I think the contact that he had via Instagram with the victims is pretty damning. Like a few days before, I think he wasn't responded to.
So that stands out.
That stands out to me. Just that he had contact with these people.
How do you feel about the DNA? Is that big in your mind?
Yeah.
Or do you think that's not so big?
DNA.
And we'll talk about that. We got a whole discussion about the DNA, but let's just generally say DNA.
And I guess just like the overall idea of everything. So I mean, he fits the bill for bushy eyebrows, athletic build, white. What's the car again? It's a
Hyundai Elantra.
White Elantra, that stuff.
So you would say.
So the three of those things all together are.
So he fits the physical description of one of the living witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Who I have thoughts on that. I think they're going to have her change her story, or she has maybe changed her story on that. But physical description is good enough, and then the car, which he drives a car like that's seen in the area. All right, so that's like 4 different pieces of evidence, and all that being, kind of keeping him in a circle of severe suspicion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we were talking about this on our last episode that got all glitchy, but the decision to go death gets, as Luke has talked about, gets you enhanced jury selection. And enhanced jury selection, because there's 2 phases, right, Luke? There's the guilt phase and there's the penalty phase. Mm-hmm. So you get like a juiced up, in your case, you got at least 1 or 2 folks on your jury in that cop killing case that you would consider like 2s, right?
Right.
And that was enough for the state to be concerned enough to give you the life deal. But let's just say here, there's no way in the world they're going to give up any offer. But does it give you, on the guilt phase, with a relatively circumstantial case, it kind of keeps Kohberger in the circle of suspicion, but doesn't necessarily do anything else? Does that give you an empowered jury, Luke, where maybe they don't get beyond a reasonable doubt if other things come into it? We're going to talk about the alibi notice. We're going to talk about this living friend who's a witness that they really tried hard to get to the prelim, and they ended up just taking her statement. And we don't really know what has come about that, whether that's been, it can be a totally change in her identification of Kohberger or the person that may have been in the house. But you think the state is thinking about that at all when they seek death, Luke? Or do you think the defense is like, well, it's death, but we're going to go for the the big win. Because in the Nicholas Cruz case down in Florida, they totally were picking their best jury they possibly could, and they totally waived the guilt phase.
Well, they pled.
They pled. We're saying we're not gonna.
Right.
Right. They pled to that. We're not gonna mess around with you, jury. We're not trying to say he's not guilty of anything. We're just gonna talk about the penalty phase and try to convince you that he needs a life sentence based on everything we've got for you, and they did get life. Here it's like, they're going out and there's some dusty weed balls kind of going out in some kind of like old western yard, and you got the state walking out slowly, you got Kohberger's defense team walking out slowly, state's cocking back with their death notice, defense is squaring them up saying you can't prove it, we're going to pick a good jury. Is there any way in the world that backfires on the state, Luke, with a empowered jury? What do you think?
You asked me like 10 questions in one diatribe, but basically, I would say from 1,000 feet, it's very rare in a case where death has been noticed that a defense team is claiming alibi. Like usually, the cases are horrific. That's why they have these aggravators that are making them eligible for death. And it's usually not like, oh, I wonder who did it. It's usually like, the person is mentally deranged, slaughters his whole family, was chewing his wrists off when the cops got there, and wrote his confession in blood on the wall. So like, they're usually that kind of stuff. Or, someone really just had years of trauma and just lost his top. And you're going at the state for a couple years saying, look, he's so broken. Let me tell you about how he was raised. He can't help himself. I'm not a national expert on death penalty. I've been involved in a few, but usually you don't see hey, we didn't even do it, because a lot of times you're wanting to get a benefit in trial. It's almost sometimes a foregone conclusion. So if you select that jury, you run the risk of really infuriating them. That if they don't buy your alibi, and you've been sitting there the whole time through the guilt phase, being like, wasn't me, and all these grieving family members.
You lose credibility. Right?
You lose credibility. They're upset, and then by the time, if they find you guilty, by the time you get to the sentencing phase, that jury doesn't want to hear about how you were, you wet the bed until you were 10. So like, it's a huge strategy.
Because we think you're a liar. You and your lawyers are liars.
And a lot of
That's
times,
part of the McDonald triad.
right? And sometimes you'll pump a little hard at it, even if you truly aren't going alibi. You'll say, well, you know what? It wasn't murder. It was manslaughter, and you go for that. You just didn't have the mental state, and maybe you get some jurors that still have some, as they say, residual guilt. They've convicted your guy, but it wasn't an easy decision. But now some of those same jurors that had some doubt at first during the guilt phase, they don't want to give your guy a death sentence. They're going to give him life because they have this residual guilt. But if you go hell for leather and claim alibi, my opinion is that you better know what in the world you're talking about and be able to prove it. Because otherwise it could be a catastrophic backfire. So it's very intriguing to me. I don't typically see that. But this case is intriguing for many reasons.
Somebody, I know we're getting to this later, but it sounds like somebody who's following wants to know, how is his I was driving around gonna pan out? Weren't you talking about how your theory, what you think they may do with that?
Are you okay if we jump to
We
that?
can.
Oh, sorry. He doesn't like when we get off track.
Well, I just like to. We can meander around the tracks.
It's not me, it's the people. It's just what the people want.
Let's answer the people. So,
yeah. This is a democracy.
So, the Idaho alibi notice statute is the same as South Carolina. So we're pretty familiar with it. It's not word for word the same, but you basically have to provide the prosecution with your alibi notice 10 days before trial, unless requested by the judge. And it's got to be 10 days, and it's got to be enough where the prosecution can investigate the claim of alibi. give them just enough time to get it done. So, I think with some of these filings and some of the information about an alibi defense, the state has been very eager to get on top of that. And the defense kind of said, well, you'll get it when you get it. We'll comply with all the rules and the case law. And they have, but I think what's come out last week a little bit was kind of some generalized, keep the judge happy. We'll tell you a little bit, and then we reserve the right to supplement. And so, Luke, you want to talk about what you read in a little bit?
It's just interesting because, but when we did this podcast last week, the defense was basically saying we're in compliance with the rule. We don't have to basically tell you right now. But between then and now, maybe due to pressure or maybe due to a strategic decision to please the judge, they've released this filing that basically says he had a long habit of going for drives alone. He would go for drives at night.
That doesn't sound creepy at all.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this to help.
He is not claiming to be at a specific location at a specific time. We can't say, no witness can say precisely where he was at each moment of the hour. So it's he was driving. And I like this quote, Mr. Kohberger has complied to the extent possible at this time. So I think it's kind of like, get off my back. We'll tell you he's driving. And, your first reaction is, well, that ain't exactly helpful because the state's theory is he drove alone in the wee hours of the night and did a horrific murder with a big knife.
But he bought off an Amazon.
But, I think the way the language is couched and we're complied with the extent possible at this time, there's certainly more to it. I mean, you're not going to raise alibi, which literally means he's elsewhere, and then just float a soft kind of theory that works with the prosecution.
You can't float a soft alibi.
But what they're saying is, had you given us prosecutors a real prelim and not had a secret indictment proceeding, we would have drawn this out through testimony of your witnesses. And so it's like only through your own choices have we been hampered. And it's only because we didn't get that proceeding that you don't know. So I found that to be very interesting.
I like that. That's fair. I mean, they're never going to get a prelim on a death case. Never. A million years are they going to get a prelim on a death case. So I do like that. And there is this witness that they were trying to subpoena up from out of state. She's got something to say that is different.
And that, there's the driving alibi to be successful is going to have some witness behind it, or be 10 days before trial,
totally supplemented.
And here's the video from Wendy's where he was at that drive-through 15 minutes
away, lonely, but up all night
with the
receipt,
time stamped.
Right,
because otherwise it doesn't do much except help the prosecutor, which is what a local prosecutor not involved in this case was asked to comment, and he happily dove in from Idaho. This guy basically said, yeah, as a prosecutor, I'm looking at what he's committed to, and that's consistent with my case. He was up, he was out, he was alone, he was in that Hyundai Elantra, and all of a sudden, things are kind of, as a prosecutor, with the cell phone, supports that information, no one else was with him, his alibi actually is hurting him. So, yeah, I mean, that's certainly a take, is alone in your car. That's not an alibi. That helps us. So I think the defense is definitely keeping their cards close to the chest, but trying to somewhat comply with tension from the public media or the judge to say something about it. So it's not, because no one wants a pointless delay. So I think they're trying to get a little credibility with.
I mean, we'll expect a massive supplemented alibi notice, certainly outside of that 10-day window. And the thing about an alibi notice as well is what?
I just had someone ask me to wave.
Oh, it's like, hey.
Say hey.
I mean, the thing about an alibi notice is as soon as you turn that over, your alibi witnesses are getting
hammered,
mauled by law enforcement.
So I think they've got something else.
Which is probably why you only have 10 days to turn it over.
Right,
They're just keeping it up their sleeve.
They're keeping it up their sleeve and trying to say that they've at least been somewhat forthcoming.
Now, if the state was really genuinely concerned about this and wanted something done about it, they can have a hearing and request a judge to expand the timeline for the alibi notice. This is a serious matter. It takes serious investigative work. Let's go ahead and judge. We want it 30 days before trial. Or
I don't see how that would be possible.
I don't either. But like, it's like kind of like stop complaining and just get real.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting real, we have a October 2nd, 2023 trial date that is still going. There haven't been any extensions or requests by the defense to delay that. I mean, most capital lawyers and even murder cases we do, and we're usually, unless it's like really old case and it needs to get to trial, we're not concerned about a continuance request. We always can get more time to investigate a claim, to be more prepared. But apparently Kohberger's team are saying we're ready. I think they got what they like, and this is like the ultimate game of chicken, where they're gonna plow forward and hit hard in the guilt phase. And
I mean, I guess if you do in fact have a slam dunk alibi, you don't really have to worry too much about the second phase. You don't have to really map out your mitigation. I mean, but the other thing is,
it's post-conviction relief. If you did have it, obviously you may find it important to go to the prosecutor and show your cards, because they might be barked up the wrong tree. Well,
but
I know. We have prosecutors that we would never give anything to until the right moment, because we don't trust them.
Right.
And we have some that we trust with everything, and we know they're going to take the investigative work we've done or evidence we've found, and they're going to do the right thing with it. So
some will, some won't. So it could be some of that going on, or just the politics behind it are too great, where a prosecutor could never, even in the face of insurmountable video footage in the Wendy's drive-thru, getting that big, I want mine, Baconator, biggie sized.
4 for $4.
Biggie sized. Holden Mayo.
You've been looking at pictures of Kohberger.
Mm-hmm.
What is Kohberger going to order in that late night Wendy's drive-thru? What do you think he's going to get?
He's
going to get something weird.
Yeah,
right?
he's going to get a strawberry frosty without fries.
And a plain baked potato.
And a plain baked potato with a side of fruit. That's what he's going to get. He's going to get something so off the wall. This man.
No combos, all like
individual
side
child's
stuff.
menu.
Within his the right macros or something. Because remember, he's got to keep that athletic build.
That's right. I mean,
He needs a few more Wendy's runs.
Yeah.
His defense needs to start beefing him up a little bit.
Yeah. Right. You don't want him to seem too stabby agile.
I don't know. Of course, now he's all suited up. Since they served death on him, every public court appearance, he's got to, he can't be looking in shackles. He's going to be, in a suit.
Sweater vest, if they really know what's
with all these gag orders now more than ever, they were not going away, because this is a high-profile case. So there'll be, there's not going to be a lot of public dissemination of material, except for these little filings here and there we get. If only the state had allowed that freedom, this whole case could be blown wide open. All right, so...
But I think it's still getting continued. Someone's going to ask for continuance. Yeah, October, less than a year, 4-body, internationally publicized quadruple homicide death case. There's no way it goes October 2nd.
Here's the other thing about this case that I think the audience needs to know. On a case of this magnitude, both sides are only doing this case. They're not doing any other casework.
That's a great point.
They're not.
Talk about that.
I mean,
what happened?
That's the reality of it. They're only doing this case. Kohberger's lawyers are not returning other client calls. They've gotten special, dispensation to just focus on this. Same with the prosecutor. They're not prosecuting other cases. They're only working on this, so it's not like Luke answering the door and all of a sudden there's a client walking up. they're in a dungeon. They're like, not literally a dungeon, but they're focusing. They've got their war room set up. I remember Luke, as a young lawyer, if he had a big murder case, I remember you got a lot of flack because you would get court protected.
I did on one case
for like 2 months in advance, and
some new judge who may or may not sit very high in the Fourth Circuit now, who may or may not have been nominated for Supreme Court, or in the final thought analysis when she was new. She did sign off an order for court protection for me and my co-counsel for like 2 months because I had my first homicide by child abuse case. And I was like, so I was just infuriating all these prosecutors. They're like, I need you to come in here and handle this.
Remember one prosecutor in particular was like, Luke, come out of your lair, Luke. You hiding in your lair.
Pulling up in my lair. And that was a little excessive at the time.
I just picture like that Charlie Day meme where you've got like all of the evidence on the wall with like the red string.
It's a lot of that.
You haven't slept in like 2 weeks.
It's a lot of beautiful minds.
You're just like strung out. Like, I'm gonna figure it out.
Well, this conference room when we're trial prepping turns into a big war room. Basically, we'll have stickies up everywhere.
Just like the movies, y'all.
Just like the movies. But bottom line is, that October court trial date is right around the corner, but they're not doing anything else other than this case.
So what happens if you had cases that you were actively working on already?
Well, he's got the public defender, and so all those cases are being reassigned. Same with the prosecution. They get reassigned. Backburnered, reassigned.
Like Oprah out here, you get a case. You
get a case.
You get a client. You get a client.
You get a case. But yeah, so Luke says it's going to get continued. I don't know, man. This is a big old game of chicken. Big old game of chicken.
Well, it's easy for the prosecutor. I think if 10 days, just before 10 days before trial, the defense turns over some alibi evidence that is like earth-shattering, and the prosecutor could say, we asked for it in July, we asked for it in August, we got some big reference to driving cars like Tracy Chapman and... So, and here they are turning over their fast car going through Wendy's video, and we need to interview every worker. We need to subpoena employee records. We need to get IT to look at it. We need to...
Some country musician has...
Yeah, that's some drama.
What? I hear that she's like not that upset about it, and that he's doing all right, and that he changed none of the lyrics, and that she's got like $500,000 in royalties off that song going pretty big all of a sudden.
Well, that's great then. Because I feel like,
I think her fans are like, who is this dude?
Yeah, because you can't like take the credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
But I guess that's not exactly, that wasn't maybe the full story. I guess she's sitting pretty on a yacht, not worried about it.
I think, apparently she's very kind of like a little bit of a shut-in, is not really in the public eye at all, and she was briefly interviewed, and she's like, I'm fine with it. He didn't change anything.
Check their bank accounts.
But
I think it's always
just
about
like our bank accounts will be after Uberito.
Yeah,
a tasty lunch treat.
Did y'all talk about that?
Yep. When
did you also have Uberito?
Sure did. Why is Uberito great, Luke? I was telling Hannah, you're kind of the health stuff. It's all protein and no fat.
You can make those orders that way, or you can get what we got. Well,
anyway, Uberito has many options.
If Uberito wants to sponsor our podcast, we will eat it every day for the rest of the day.
We actually used to do that.
You guys would be like the new Jared, but
we went through a phase of Uberito.
It's good. It's quick. Anyway, but
you think there's going to be a continuance.
And it's easy for the prosecutor, if it's based on some significant alibi stuff, they can say, we tried to get it. And now they're forcing us to ask continuance, wasting everybody's time and scheduling. And a judge probably would grant it because they don't tend to like this. We complied with the essence, the thrust of the law kind of stuff.
I'd be so upset because they're complying with the rule. We've got a trial date. Their client's locked up without a bond. They're going to have, with a date like this, as you know, hundreds of witnesses under subpoena, law enforcement.
But the jury is the thing that's the biggest thing. I mean, they will have hundreds of jurors, and questionnaires will go out to get preliminary information. It will be a huge ordeal, so you don't want a last-minute continuance of a death case. You want as early as possible, like months in advance, if it's not going to go.
We're in August.
I know. That's why it's going to be a cluster.
I don't think it's going to continue. How about we bet an Uberito delicious lunch on that? I think it's going forward. I think Game of Chicken is on. And everyone's going to have a crash course of deliverance and justice. I think they're just going to rock it. I think Kohberger's like totally into this. I don't think the way he strides into court with his suit and everything, looking all deliberate and
what do you think he's
intentional.
into? Sorry,
I think he's into this trial. I think he's way into this.
Well, if we're kind of diving back into this whole, he studied the criminology of it all. Like maybe this is all like part of his plan. Like this was just his life dream to like be part of something like this.
He just like, I've been out driving alone for a decade now, hoping that I'll drive past some murder and I'll get caught up in it.
Right.
Or maybe it's part of the flip side, which is to plan such a carefully manipulated crime.
Right.
That it's kind of like the old Ed Norton movie where like it's like a great escape. You get caught and then you go through the histrionics of being exonerated, and then you write your book and retire, and then he can be the professor of criminology at Princeton who can talk to you about, you want to take his class because he can tell you whether he got away with murder or how he was wrongfully arrested in the first place. I don't know. Crazier things have happened, but
college professors routinely have crazy eyebrows.
That's true.
So he's got that.
Check.
Got that going for him.
He's got real life experience going for him now.
And I feel like a lot of Elantras too are in those parking lots.
And I don't think that Elantra is going to have the same type of black box that Murdaugh's like late model Suburban had.
For the GPS like OnStar data?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to have that.
Well, that's potentially a good thing.
Do you think Kohberger would drive a car with OnStar data?
I would hope not.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we want to talk a little bit about other than the alibi kind of dust up. Before the alibi dust up, there was the planted evidence dust up.
See, I usually am pretty good about our transitions into the next thing, but you're right. Once we got off, well, it's my fault. Now I don't really know where we are.
So
you're gonna dig me out of this hole.
All right, here we go. Stay with me, Hannah. Stay with me. So the state got all pissy because in a lot of these filings, there's still outstanding discovery, all right? And so one of the biggest battles in this case is going to be the DNA. And there's, Kohberger's DNA is touch DNA, and it's on the button of a sheath for a knife that is left on the crime scene. And it's not a DNA profile that is from like fluids or anything like that. It is literally touch. So I touch my brother's little head, and then I touch my note, and now I have definitely transferred my brother's DNA onto this piece of paper here. And so that's a level of DNA that can be attacked. And so basically in some of these filings, Kohberger's defense team are saying, listen, number one, you're not giving us all of the DNA stuff. Like, they still have not turned over the state an entire lab that looked at this DNA when they popped out this hit on Kohberger. And that's really annoying the defense. It would annoy us too. But basically, in some of these kind of response filings, the defense has basically said that it's transfer DNA. It's imperative that, we kind of get down to all this discovery violations in terms of the lab. Potentially this DNA could come from a different source, and it could be, planted there, and that got the state all riled up. Oh my God, you're talking about planting evidence, and how dare you? We're law enforcement, this and that. Good luck, proving that. Ho ho ho, and like they did all that kind of stuff. And the defense is really talking about this. They're talking about Kohberger's DNA or like that kind of chromosome that could be a male member of his family, like his dad. Some of this stuff that hasn't been provided is like coming from like proprietary genetic DNA testing, like you go send
23andMe.
Yeah, and so like some of that is not.
Don't do this. But
Don't do it.
But what the defense is really saying is this: you got his DNA, and you've also got hundreds of law enforcement people looking at this stuff. Yes, you are collecting items of evidence from the crime scene. We're not saying you planted a knife sheathed at the crime scene. We're saying that the type of DNA this is, touch DNA, if not handled properly, could have been transferred in processing. But that was fun. I mean, looking at all that, they were going back and forth and getting pretty agitated. And so, that is something that I'm sure the defense will attack as they go out gunslinging on this case.
And they get a little bit of leg to stand on because they're going to have some expert that can talk about how that can happen as you're comparing different sources of DNA with evidence collected if you're sloppy. But it also is somewhat consistent as a DNA outlier when you have no other DNA evidence really incriminating him where you would expect to see it on clothing, in his car.
Fingernails of the victims.
There was such a close struggle with these folks. Fingernails of victims who were fighting for their lives. All that slashing and cutting and blood spatter and transfer of his clothes to his car seat, to his steering wheel, to his apartment. It's just nothing. It's nothing there. And there isn't any obvious evidence of like luminol cleanup or anything that you would see with those agents. So it kind of gives the defense a leg to stand on to say, well, because we don't see all of that, it's more likely that you could see a sloppiness. So we want to know about the labs. Where's it coming from? Where was it tested? So it is pretty interesting.
The thing that stands out for me in particular is we've got these 4 victims, and none of them have Kohberger's DNA under their fingernail. So I just got my twin brother. So, identical DNA.
That's not going to do much for you.
All right, sorry. Hannah, I just got Hannah's DNA under my fingernails by just touching her like that.
I didn't realize that it would be that light.
Yeah, I mean, DNA is sloughing off.
And I could claw your face off, and they could scrape my nails and be like, that's not going to do any good.
They're twins. But in that moment.
Luke and I, we do a lot of murder cases, and we represent a lot of, defendants in cases involving stabbings, and they're very messy. It's a very personal, violent kind of thing, and it's very, very frequent that you have not just a singular victim. If you have like a one victim case, but you got four victims here with an opportunity to fight back. You're getting stabbed, and your first reaction is to stop the attacker. You're clawing, you're screaming, you're fighting,
and spatter blood on
everywhere.
The very flexible, athletic killer.
So you're going for his face, you're going for his hands, everything.
Yeah, how much time had passed when he was arrested or brought in?
It was a while.
Okay.
A couple of weeks.
But I wonder, because there's the report that I think it was at Xana that put up like quite a fight. Would he have like scratches on him?
Potentially, yeah. Actual wounds that, I've got scratches on my arms from yard work. They would still be potentially visible a week, 2 weeks.
I guess unless he was fully covered.
Yeah, I think the killer, to avoid all that transfer of DNA and blood and hair, and would have to be wearing some type of like Dexter kill suit or something. But but that still has to be
his Amazon.
That still has to be like balled up and taken and disposed of in a way that doesn't transfer. It's a very, for the Dexter analysis, Dexter would have a kill room set up. So he would obviously drug the victim and bring them to his tarped off kill room, and then he would just tidy it all up, and that was good. But whoever this is going into this place and would have to be somehow isolated against all that transfer of blood and DNA material to not then go with him somehow. So that is a curious one.
Your wheels are turning. What do you think?
Unless it was someone else.
I'm just still thinking about the fingernail scrapings. I'm thinking back to the Murdoch case where Maggie, as the victim, had, she just apparently had her nails done, and she had like the gardener's DNA under her nails.
Small amount.
a small amount, but
It's still there.
Even after like apparently her nails were done that afternoon. So, it's a real easy way to get physical evidence of your attacker, and we have 4 different individuals with none of it there, and so
That's very interesting.
it's a point the defense will certainly hammer on, along with, of course, this alibi that's going to get massively fleshed out, and then with whatever kind of investigative work they've done with this living witness, which they were so eager to get her to the prelim. So very interesting. But we've got a trial date set. We got tumbleweeds out in an old Idaho, western town. We got a state, with the pressure to get justice and
1,000-yard stairs,
seek death versus
spitting tobacco.
Kohberger's team is like, you ain't got it. You ain't got the juice, and gonna have the type of jury selection that defense lawyers don't ever get to empower a jury. So it's real high stakes. And, I think I said this before, and you touched on this, Luke. This is an alibi death case. I'm sure it's not unheard of. I'm sure there's cases that have been, handled this way, but
lost very quickly.
Yeah, mostly it's like the Cruz case.
Right. It's hard to think of alibi death cases.
It's like the Tim Jones case here in South Carolina. It's the Aurora Theater case out in Colorado. It's mitigation. It's let's not insult the jury about the guilt phase. Let's just try to save a life, and that's not what's happening here. I mean, everyone's loading for bear. So, but you owe me a delicious Uberito if it stays on track, and I'll owe you a delicious Uberito lunch.
Extra cilantro, cojito cheese.
Oh, extra cilantro. I'm so curious in the comments. Are you somebody that likes cilantro? Do you like cilantro?
Oh, we love cilantro.
Okay. Do you agree on almost all flavor profiles, or do you have?
Yes. Pretty much.
Oh, really? Wow, that's so interesting. Twins are fascinating, aren't they?
If you say,
some people have like.
If you say so.
Because some people have that like cilantro gene or whatever, where it tastes like soap.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, I love cilantro. Load it up.
Cilantro's the best.
Yeah, cilantro is the best. I had something crazy happen. Do we have time for a side story?
Sure.
I had the craziest thing happen yesterday. So we were just enjoying a rainy Sunday in our living room, and all of a sudden a high-speed chase zooms past our street, on our street, and so someone had stolen a car off 77, and then police were chasing them. They peel into our neighborhood, and they slam into a tree, wreck the car. The guy gets out of the car and keeps running. Hops fence, they never got him.
Oh, man.
Never found him. I tried to run after him and be like, you need representation.
Did you see him running?
Do you need the shield?
Let me slow you down, so maybe you'll get caught, and also tell you about some future representation.
No, but it was wild. I'll have to show y'all videos of it. It was crazy.
He doesn't need representation if he doesn't get caught.
Yeah, I think he's quite athletic build, as some would say.
How are his eyebrows?
I didn't get a good look at the eyebrows, but yeah. Anyways,
little.
Yeah. So if you're from Columbia, that was just some hot news happening in the area.
Yeah, there's been a lot of like running lately. It seems like in the news. I don't know if it's the heat, but like running with bad results as well, like crashes and fatalities and. Not good.
Very bad results.
I think it's like a trend right now for the young folk to steal cars. I think you can like go on TikTok and figure out like how to steal certain models of cars. They'll like show you.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, and so I think that's happening.
Yeah.
But no one watching steal a car. Don't do that. But if you do and you need representation, call the Sheelys.
That's right.
Well. That was a random little story. What else do we have left for today? Or is that about it? Have we hit everything?
We've covered the high points.
We've covered the high points? Well, if y'all have any questions, go ahead and drop them. I know a lot of people were curious about the DNA, which we touched on.
No pun intended.
Ha ha. You didn't
that took me a minute. Let's see. Oh, people want to see the outfits. Or just where you got your outfits from.
What?
Yeah, they want the lawyer outfit check.
Our court fits?
Yeah, court fits.
It's nothing special. I honestly forgot about the podcast today.
Can't believe they actually.
We're actually a little bit twinny today, aren't we?
Yeah,
twinny. We got grays and blues.
We've got
very
some
stained.
fry boots, actually. Some bonobo pants. I'm not sure about a shirt.
This is a great question. Thank you guys.
This is our office wear. Go to court and we'll suit up a little bit. But, you get that
typically always in blue. Blue is the brand.
blue and white. But we do a lot of blues. Sleeves rolled up.
Is it true that blue is more trusting? Like people are like versus black? I heard that.
We are all into blues and grays and browns.
We don't really do black suits.
And then when we're in court, we never button our suit jackets because the idea is, you got something to hide if your suit jacket is buttoned. So we're open. Open to persuade a jury. Open to, whatever.
Plus, too many burrito bowls.
Airborne.
It's hard to button those jackets anyway.
We do have a question about that DNA. How do we know that there isn't evidence under the fingernails? Would that have had to have been presented already, or no? We couldn't discover that.
I think
already.
that would have been.
It would have to already be
That
out there.
would have been out there because if you recall, in the very beginning of this case, they put the DNA into the long affidavit for the probable cause warrant and a lot of these search warrants as well. It really did. I think Luke's got it. We had a 25-page kind of filing about everything they had, and it included the DNA. And so, that would
have been there.
I think everything we have on the DNA is out, except for some of the sourcing documents about the lab. But we would have heard about slam dunk, scratch DNA under victims' fingernails.
Oh yeah, that would have been out there.
It's just not there, which is why I think the defense has this kind of extra bravado to claim, transfer on the one DNA that connects, because where's the rest of it?
Yeah.
So that's the state would love to have had that.
This crime,
slammed up on DNA.
The juxtaposition on that issue, this crime scene, and the jury will get to see it, will be so horrific. It will be really bad. Mm-hmm. When we are trying a murder case, and we always try to limit within reason. Like certain things are so graphic that would really inflame the passions and the prejudice outside the bounds of what's lawful. But the jury does get a chance to see the crime scene. They're going to see, these wounds. They're going to see how horrific it is. And if I'm the defense, I'm saying, okay.
They might even go to it. I know there was some discussion about it being torn down, and they had to preserve it.
Yeah.
I think it got torn down.
I think there was maybe a plan to, and there's some
I would not have done
intervention.
that.
I can't remember,
but the bottom line is absence of DNA. You got this one little sheath with transferred DNA on the button, and no DNA under these victims in such a brutal crime scene. It'll be powerful in terms of reasonable doubt for the defense.
I know we touched on this earlier, but somebody wanted to talk more about the GPS tracking. Do we think that, I know, Luke, you gave your answer, but do we think that the Elantra in question is going to have the same kind of data that Alec Murdaugh's?
I do not.
I don't know what kind of car he drove.
I know his car was like a
maybe a souped up
2020 Suburban or something, but I don't think this older Elantra.
It wasn't that new, Luke. Murdaugh's was like.
Well,
if that's what you're talking about.
I'm happy to be corrected on that. But if it does contain any kind of black box data, GPS start-stop data with the computer, I'm sure it's being actively investigated. I'm sure it's already been actively investigated. But the older the car, the cheaper the car, the less likely it's going to have that wealth of information, which is why when I do my crimes, I drive my 77 MGB.
Knew that was coming.
You would look so ridiculous.
And he's gonna blame you for it.
Or would I look?
And also, that car is fairly loud. When you pull up to the office and that drop top,
is it?
It's pretty throaty. I can hear you coming a mile away.
I'd much rather someone say loud car versus Luke's car.
Your car is extreme. Your car is very distinctive in Columbia. It's bright blue in a color they don't really make anymore, and it's really tiny, and it's loud.
Someone says they have a 74 MGB.
Oh, nice.
You guys should start a club.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a Facebook group out there.
Yeah, there's tons of drivers clubs, but
Yeah.
well, that person is very cool. And kudos to you.
Lily, you are awesome.
All right, Lily.
Well, very cool. I think we'll maybe wrap up there today, but you know where to find us. A week from today, we'll be right here, 5 p.m. live again.
Streaming from MySpace.
Streaming from MySpace. Yeah, they're adding on a new model. No, we'll be on TikTok. In the meantime, feel free to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, obviously TikTok. We'll be posting some clips from this podcast. If you miss any of this episode and you want to hear more, you can always stream the episode this week. It'll be posted to streaming platforms. It'll also be, the visual will be posted on YouTube. So if you want to watch us again, that's also there as well. Once again, this is Bring the Jury.
Bring the jury.